Good afternoon. Welcome to Preservation Connecticut's Spring 2025 series talking about preservation, our noontime chats about everything preservation. I'm Jane Montanaro, Executive Director of Preservation Connecticut, and I'm pleased to be your host. Today, we are chatting with Norman Berman from Temple Beth Israel Preservation Society about social justice and modern architecture. This program is made possible through our sponsors, Kroski Architects, Cronenberger and Sons Restoration, and Hoops, Morgenthaler, Rausch, Scaramoza, Attorneys at Law. And thank you very much, sponsors. I'd like to begin the program by sharing with you information about Preservation Connecticut. Preservation Connecticut is the statewide private nonprofit historic preservation organization founded in 1975 by a special act of the Connecticut General Assembly as the Connecticut Trust for Historic Preservation, to preserve, protect, and promote buildings, sites, and landscapes that contribute to the heritage and vitality of Connecticut's communities. We are statutory partners with the Connecticut State Historic Preservation Office, and I'm proud to say that for 50 years, we have successfully championed the protection of remarkable community assets all over the state by leveraging funding, advocating, forming partnerships, and promoting stewardship. Our office is located in the Eli Whitney Boarding House on Whitney Avenue in Hamden. It's listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and it is the only surviving residential structure of the industrial village that's centered on Eli Whitney's armory, and it has served as Preservation Connecticut's headquarters since 1989. We have a staff of 10 preservationists and a board of 21 preservationists from around the state. Staff listed here are always available to assist with inquiries. Chris Wiegren is our deputy director. Contact Chris for information on historic preservation easements, our bi-monthly magazine, Connecticut Preservation News, our Olmsted and Connecticut Landscape Survey, and to arrange book talks for his book, Connecticut Architecture, Stories of 100 Places. Renee Trubert is our Making Places and Preservation Services Officer. Please contact Renee for information on redevelopment of historic industrial sites and tax credit applications. Jordan Sorensen is our Development and Special Project Manager. Jordan manages our communications and outreach to members through social media and email, receives and monitors demolition notices from municipalities, and prepares historic tax credit applications and nominations to the state and national registers of historic places. Kristen Hopewood is our membership and outreach manager. She manages all of the inquiries that come through our website, provides member services, arranges special events, and is the editor of our Historic Properties Exchange, a free listing of threatened historic places. And finally, our team of circuit riders. Mike Farino is the field service director, and circuit riders are Brad Scheid, Stacy Vero, Stefan Danchuk, and Andrea Florsheimer is our circuit rider fellow. Circuit riders provide immediate boots-on-the-ground service to homeowners, developers, municipal leaders, nonprofit organizations and museums, historic district commissions, and much, much more, with an array of preservation technical assistance, including community organizing, prioritizing maintenance and repairs, historic designations, funding, and archaeology. These lunchtime chats have become an important and enjoyable tool for us to meet our mission. We're able to connect with the public and hear what's on your mind. And please feel free during the program to use the chat feature to ask questions directly at the end, or you're welcome to contact us afterwards for a call or a site visit. Join us next week for History Moving Forward with Connecticut Landmarks. But now I get to turn the program over to Norm Berman, and I will stop sharing my screen, Norm, so you are welcome to share yours.
Great. Thank you so much. And hi, everyone. And thank you, Stacy and Jane, for making this opportunity available to us. I think we have at the Preservation Society an interesting story, an interesting building, and So, when you have something of interest, you want to share it. And I appreciate that. Let's see if this system will work. There we are. I think that works. Yeah.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you so much. So, I am honored to be the president of the Temple Beth Israel Preservation Society. I'm also one of the founders of the organization. We are in Danielson, Connecticut. There's a little off the internet shot of a small Connecticut town, which really hasn't changed a great deal since I first encountered it as a child of about 2 or 3 years old. We're in the northeast corner. We are way in the northeast corner, and we're that's our building. We sit in a quiet residential neighborhood, and we are this year celebrating our 75th anniversary of the creation of the community and the commencement of construction of the building. So I'll go back to 1948. It's the year I was born. Um, Danielson's population at that time was about 10,000, and it's pretty much the same today. At that time, there were 9 Jewish families in the community, and they were members of the Jewish Community Club. They had no building, and what they would do is they would gather at one another's homes for holiday observances, for prayer, for rituals. And so it was very quiet, it was very informal. And with the end of World War II and the liberation of some 250,000 European Jews from concentration camps, things changed. Many Holocaust survivors ended up in DP camps, and they couldn't return to their homes. They had lost everything. Many had lost entire families. In this photograph, there are some people who ended up being in our community in Danielson. Um, Here, it so happens I came across this photograph. That's my mother in the middle, and next to her is my aunt, Sarah. Uh, these images were from the DP camp in just south of Munich. It was called Fehrenwald, in a town called Wolfritzhausen. There were some 5,000 survivors who resided in that camp for about 4 years, 5 years, some longer. And many of them met each other. They married there. My folks, um, those are my folks. They met and married in the DP camp, and I was born there. Um, what was fascinating, and here's a this is a telegram that came from one of the survivors, and it was sent to his relatives in New York, Leon Israelite, Laser Israelite here, and basically it said, "We live, we are alive." This was the first notification that reached the American relatives that the that Leon and Hannah, his wife, Anna, Laser, Aaron, that they had all survived the Holocaust. And so, they came to America. And so there was a wave of Jewish survivors and refugees. And Baron Maurice de Hirsch, very wealthy industrialist, European industrialist, helped fund the Orient Express, actually. But he created the Jewish Agricultural Society, which was um, uh, its mission was basically to get Jews out of tenements, out of sweatshops, out of the cities, and get them onto farms. And his organization was responsible for a wave of Jewish settlement into the Danielson area. The agent for the society, a Benjamin Miller, would go into the tenements in the Bronx and the Lower East Side, and he would encourage folks to come and visit a farm in Connecticut, a settler, someone who had already settled, and they would come in his car. He would drive them out to Danielson and he would introduce them. They would sit around the kitchen table with a cup of tea, and the conversation was in Yiddish. And it was, can you make a living as a farmer? How do you do this? Because these folks didn't have any background. They didn't know the first thing about farming. And so through this conversation, they would be encouraged to, leave the city and come to Danielson. And one family at a time, by 1953, there were over 40 Jewish families, immigrant families who had settled in and around Danielson with the assistance of the Jewish Agricultural Society. And there's my folks. There's me sitting on my dad's shoulders when we first came to the farm, our farm in Moosop, Connecticut. The Agricultural Society provided support and information and training. They provided financing. They helped with mortgages or, just outright grants, helping these refugees buy farms. And they also published in Yiddish a monthly magazine, The Jewish Farmer. It was called Der Jiddische Farmer. And it was filled with articles about examples of how to do chickens, how to do eggs, what to do, what vaccinations to get, and how to clean, and when to buy crops, when to buy chickens, at what age, when to sell them, all sorts of resources. So this is sort of by way of introduction, these are the folks who settled in Danielson in the early 50s, and they realized they needed a place, a building. And the temple was built by and for this influx of refugees. And it was a very interesting group of people. I mean, I remember them as a child. They all spoke Yiddish. They were all just off the boat. They were not versed if they spoke English, they spoke it with a heavy accent. Many traumatized, many malnourished, many in mourning. And they came with very little. I mean, they were impoverished. Um, but but they realized that they needed a building, they needed each other, they supported one another, and they needed a place for their children to learn. And so here's our very first board of directors. Here is the very first group of women who comprise the sisterhood of the community. And so they embarked on an effort to build a building, a house of worship, a community center, and a place for their children to be educated. And they reached out to the community to raise funds. This is a letter from Hugh Gorman, a local dairy farmer, who, when he heard about the effort to raise money for the building, said he would donate a calf. And he took it to auction. And he got $75 for it, which was an extraordinary sum of money for a calf in those days. I mean, the going rate was maybe $15 or $20. But he got, no, it was $65, which of course today would be $700, $800. But it just showed some of the support that we received from the community. Um, and what what they did was they looked for and found William Reisman, an architect, whose mother was a member of the community, Mary Reisman, and they had a poultry farm in Brooklyn, Connecticut, and she donated the stone, which is on the exterior of the building, all of the stone. They had a quarry on their farm. And her son had just graduated from Yale as an architect. And she said, Bill, you need to do a design for these people because, they just got here from Europe. They need a building. And he did. And this is the design he came up with. And his mother, Mary, died in 1951. And what he did was he donated all of his services, his design services, his oversight, in her memory. And so this was the design, and then the effort basically was to raise money. There was a groundbreaking. This is an image of the groundbreaking ceremony. Here are some of the, it was back of a truck basically, and you can see the design. Bill Reisman's design is in that framed image in the bunting there. And they broke ground in 1950 and very quickly proceeded to build the building. And it was the first floor initially of the building, and they immediately occupied it. And a key piece of the story here is the community response to these immigrants. When word got out that they were looking to build a house of worship, I mean, previously there are 9 Jewish families, so it's not like there was a strong Jewish presence in Danielson, but everybody stepped up. We received donations from every church in the community. They passed the hat or the bowl, and they came up with donations. Civic organizations, the Chamber of Commerce made a huge donation. Individuals would stop members of the community in the street in Danielson, and they would hand them several dollars, and they'd say, "Here, this is for the building." And of course, there was the donation from the community itself. I mean, the few dollars that these farmers could scrape together, they donated as well. So they raised enough money to build it, and they had a lot of volunteer labor. Um, they would leave the farm in the afternoon. They would show up on the site. They helped dig the foundation. They laid the forms for the concrete. They did some of the masonry work. And so the building, let me just say a few words about the building. Reisman was influenced by modernism, which was, heavily being taught at Harvard by Walter Gropius. And while it's modern in design, I mean, this is not a traditional synagogue building. There's some commentators have said there's a nod to older local vernacular tradition of farmhouses, storehouses, barns that are common in this part of Connecticut. Um, and so the lower portion, this portion of the building was completed in 51 and immediately started being used. You can still see the exposed, the support beams there, the rafters. of that first floor. There was no roof at that time. There was just tar paper. And they started to function, to use it as a meeting space, a prayer hall, a social hall, and a school. They had a ritual where they brought in the sacred scrolls of the and started doing weekly services. And they did it as a school, as I mentioned, and they found there's our little first grade or early education group doing a presentation. Um, and so it became a sanctuary. It became a place where they came together to revive their faith, to really rebuild their lives. And what was crucial was the support that they offered to each other. And they all spoke Yiddish. They sang familiar melodies and rebuilt really lives, rebuilt a lot of what had been torn from them in Europe. Uh, there was a vibrant sisterhood, a robust youth program, teenage program, weddings, bar mitzvahs, funerals, and membership grew to about 70 families. The upstairs, the rest of the shell of the building, was completed by 1955. And some 5 years later, they undertook to complete the sanctuary. Again, there was a fundraiser. They raised the necessary funds and they found another architect, Maurice Feingold. They had approached this well-known architect in Boston initially. He said he couldn't afford to do this, but he got his son-in-law, who had just gotten his master's degree from Harvard, and he said this would be a good project for you. Mo Feingold became one of the really well-known, lots of awards for building synagogues, public buildings. He had a role in the Holocaust Museum in DC. He's got an incredible resume, but this was his first project. And this was the group of families that raised money for the completion of the sanctuary. And this is the sanctuary, the interior, looking back toward the doors and then looking toward the east. This is the sanctuary, the ark where the scrolls are kept is in the center there with the blue curtains. In this image, the curtains are white. You can see this is the eternal light. It's always kept illuminated. This was designed by Mo Feingold. And these are the tablets, the Ten Commandments, and a plaque commemorating the 6 million Jews who were murdered in the Holocaust. A memorial board remembering members of the community who had passed away. Here's a 35th anniversary. You see the young Sam Gadenson, former representative, who attended, some of the former presidents of the community there. And so that was the building. I mean, it became a robust, a very active synagogue, a lot happening. Commentators have said the sanctuary is a simple, almost rustic space, open rafter ceiling with exposed beams, wood paneling, and they've recognized an influence of the old Polish wooden synagogues with which many of the people in the community would be familiar. So the total building was done by the early 60s. And by the 1980s, membership started to drop off. Members retired, died, moved to Israel, Florida, the Southwest, and the congregation became sort of a shadow of what it had been. Youngsters, myself included, all of my colleagues, my friends, my peers, We grew up, we left town. I mean, none of our parents wanted us to stay on the farm and to stick around. As much as they hated to see us go, we went off to college, careers, families, and we settled all over elsewhere. And so what happens? The synagogue is, by 2000, there were just a handful of people. And in 2003, we merged with a synagogue in nearby Putnam, and it was an uneasy partnership. Danielson had been the Yiddish speaking refugee farmers synagogue. The Jews of Putnam spoke English and were more assimilated, and there was a friction. And Putnam had some land right next to their synagogue, so they were going to expand, and they started talking about getting rid of the Danielson building, selling it, just, condominiums, whatever. And so this guy, Joel Rosenberg, who was on the board of the merged entity, um, was horrified at the notion of losing the Danielson building and seeing it go into, be repurposed. So he reached out to a group of us, some 15 of us, who had all been kids growing up in Temple Beth, Israel. And he said, we got to save the building. We got to do something. And he caught us at a time when we thought, yeah, it wasn't a big leap to recognize that this was important, that if the building got sold and we didn't do something, the story would disappear. I mean, and we felt that it was an important story. So with Joel's vision, we formed the Preservation Society. That was 15 years ago. And that was most of the original board, the group that got together. And we said, look, there's not enough of a Jewish community here to do another synagogue. But our story and the history is worthy of it comprises a platform from which we can be a cultural organization, a historic organization, a preservation organization, and there's enough there so that we can be an important part of the community without having religious services and a staff and a rabbi and all of the things that go with having a typical synagogue. So we got together, we incorporated. I'm an attorney. I could do this. I had help with another attorney who was one of the board members, and thus began the second chapter, what I refer to as the second chapter of the history of the building. We formed a new nonprofit. We negotiated with the Putnam organization, and we got walked away with the deed to the building, so we own it now. And we we went about the business of forming an organization. And one of the founders of the Preservation Society is the amazing Elsie Fetterman, who next week turns 98. She was among the original founders of the community. Her father had been the first president of the temple. And she was attuned to, I don't know where she came up with it, but she realized that we needed to get on the National Register, that we needed to apply for grants, that we needed to go beyond simply reaching out to the community and saying, would you give us a donation so we can, repair the roof or something. And it was at her instigation that we started, and she actually wrote the original grants, that we embarked on developing a curriculum, developing an approach, a strategy. At the same time, so what did we do? We got onto the National Register. and we got the initial grant to fund it, the survey grant, and our board grew. That's within a couple of years. We had a larger board. There's Elsie Fetterman. She's third from the left of my screen. And we also engaged several very gifted teachers who helped us develop a curriculum for how to approach middle and high school students with the story of our community, with our parents' stories, and use that as a platform for teaching the consequences of hate, the consequences of marginalization, of indifference, the need to speak up when you see something that needs to be addressed. And they helped us develop a curriculum. And for the last 15 years, we've been going into local schools, speaking with middle and high school students. Um, and and over the years, I guess we've probably reached over 1,000, maybe a few thousand students. And part of the part of the lesson is addressing hate, issues around immigration, obviously, a keen emphasis on social justice. And we also undertook to build a community archive, which would document the lives of the founders of the community, their biographies, their pictures, their artifacts, their possessions, and provide, preserve those memories and use those again as a teaching tool. We're proud and active members of the Killingly Business Association, the Historical Society, the Killingly Brooklyn Interfaith Council, and I feel like our building and our organization is a powerful reminder of the richness of our state's immigrant roots, the importance of values like compassion, generosity, faith, perseverance. We do annual fundraising campaigns, and we've received, generous donations from donors that work for organizations that have matching funds, and of course our history with grants for our capital projects has been robust and quite successful. One of our early grants was from the DAR. We've gotten grants from the Last Green Valley, Chelsea Groton Bank, the National Yiddish Book Center in Amherst, and of course, especially Preservation Connecticut, which has supported some critical infrastructure work, including most recently our roof repair, total replacement of our roof, structural stabilization, electrical upgrades. This is the ribbon cutting for the DAR project, which was a waterproofing project for our West Terrace. There's a image of that celebration. And there's the roof project. There's one of our anniversaries. I think that was the 60th anniversary of the building. Our high holiday services. This is one of our community seders, I believe. And most recently, we hosted a jazz concert, sold out, and proceeds from that went to our educational work. 1772 Fund has supported us generously, and as I mentioned, the roof replacement. So the our interfaith work is probably something that we're most proud of. We host, and we have for 70 years, partnered with the Federated Church of Christ in Brooklyn to host a Thanksgiving service. We have a community interfaith Passover Seder. This past year, we donated all of the proceeds, nearly $600, to a local food bank, the Friends of Assisi food pantry. Uh, I mean, those are the highlights. It's a deeply, I feel, it's an American story. Immigrant families survived the darkest chapter in Europe, rebuilt lives here. Um, and while the descendants have spread everywhere, far and wide, there's a lasting gratitude to their ancestors, whose perseverance is embodied in this little synagogue in Danielson. And uh, I think the thing we're most proud of is our relationship with the community. Um, Unlike many other communities, Jewish communities especially, given the rise in anti-Semitism, I think the instinct has been to hunker down, to put security around the building, and to in a way disengage from the community. And our feeling is that the more we engage with the community, uh, throw open the doors, not lock them shut, the more they know us, and the less animosity, the less suspicion, the warmer the feelings. And so that's been, when I meet with leaders of other communities, they say, "Well, what are you guys doing for security?" And I say, we're sitting on our interfaith council. We're going to church to various functions. We're donating to our local food pantry. This is what we're doing for security. And I think, thank you, God, it's worked for us. And we're convinced that it's the right approach to take. So thank you again for this opportunity to talk about something that's close to my heart. And again, with clear recognition and appreciation for the kind of support that we get from an organization like Preservation Connecticut.
Well, thank you, Norm. That was a wonderful presentation and just a really wonderful story. And I love how it you have become such an interwoven part of the community in Danielson. And what a great lesson for everyone to take forward, that's the best security, the education, and building all those partnerships and becoming one with the community.
Thank you.
So we can open it up to some questions or comments. If anyone has anything they'd like to share or ask.
Norm, but before you got on, we were chatting and you were talking about an experience you had last week in the schools of East Lyme. Could you elaborate on that a little bit? How talking about these topics now is so important, and the response you got.
Yeah, that was, and one of the most gratifying things that I get to do as part of our organization is I go into the schools and I use my family's experience in particular as the example. We teach the lessons of the Holocaust. And so I was with a class um, of middle school students, seventh graders, in East Lyme. And I told the story, and I've got family pictures, and I've got maps of Europe, and I touch on the history and the geography of the Holocaust, and use that to then move into a discussion of hate in general, anti-Semitism, racism. I mean, it's not just about anti-Semitism. It's about, some of the ugliness that we encounter in day-to-day life now. And what was incredibly gratifying is that, notwithstanding their reputation for being disinterested and disengaged, these students were very interested. They were very curious. Their teachers afterwards said, normally this class is disruptive, or they talk, or they'll heckle occasionally or make jokes or whatever. There was not a sound. They really paid attention, and maybe, I don't know, I don't think I'm that captivating a speaker, but it was the material, I think. I was talking about a dark chapter in history, and then I was talking about a very positive chapter in history where, immigrants come to a small town in Connecticut, they create a community, and they're warmly welcomed. And it's just such a contrast. I mean, just, today, yesterday, LA, I mean, or ICE in general. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of darkness, there's a lot of tension all around immigration. And maybe it was a simpler time, maybe it was more naive, whatever. But to talk about our experience as immigrants, is I think it just offers a contrast, an opportunity to say it doesn't have to be quite like this. That maybe, we could find other ways to accept people, welcome them. Yeah, if they need to leave, they should leave. I mean, there's that. But that, this us and them mentality led to some very awful stuff only 70 or 80 years ago. And we see I try to talk about what do we learn from the Holocaust experience and how do you apply it to today's life? And, I don't have to draw them pictures. I mean, they get it. They say, well, if the government is, sending certain messages, if the government is marginalizing certain people, if there's this, separation, blue and red, where no one's talking to each other and Congress isn't working together to talk about how to benefit the community, that's a slippery slope. That's the beginning of possible trouble. And so, I observe that, history can be boring. It's long ago, far away. Why bother? But I try to make it relevant and I try to say, there's some lessons here that might actually apply to our lives like today. The need to stand up, the need to speak up. Bullying is very much an issue in schools today. And, I say, look, the Holocaust the outcome may have been very different if folks in Germany and Poland elsewhere had actually not turned away or been complicit, but maybe if they had taken to the streets, maybe if they had said, wait a minute, this is wrong, I don't know, maybe a few thousand people would have saved, maybe a few million people would have been saved. Maybe that final solution wouldn't have worked as efficiently and as seamlessly as it did. And so, you see somebody being picked on. I say, it wouldn't be awful. What's the worst that'll happen? They'll say, mind your own business. But sometimes you could say, hey, that's wrong. Don't do that. And if you don't feel comfortable doing it yourself, nudge your neighbor and say, hey, maybe the two of us ought to go and intervene and say something. So it's a very easy connection to go back and forth from what was happening in 1939 Germany and talk about what's happening yesterday in East Lyme, Connecticut. It's the same values are relevant. And these kids, I mean, they got it, and their teachers were grateful. Um, and so I come away from these encounters with a lot of hope because I think the kids are getting a bad rap. They can be stimulated, they can be provoked into some very thoughtful reactions, some very creative thinking, and I come away hopeful.
How do teachers reach out to you? How do they learn about your program?
So it's largely us reaching out to them.
Mhm.
And what we try to do, we're on several lists, social studies teachers, the Association of History Teachers, and we try to put the word out. We have a curriculum brochure, basically. We say, look, here's our curriculum, it's free. you can use it. You don't have to create your own. And, and part of it is cover the history, cover the geography, cover the vocabulary, and then someone like Norm Berman will show up and he'll tell you a story. And then you can have a conversation and you can talk about history or you can talk about current events. He's ready to do either one. So we reach out to them. That's part of our program. And I don't know, it's probably, we've been in at least 15, 16 different schools, mostly in Eastern Connecticut. There are other organizations that seem to cover the cities, Central and Western Connecticut. But, New London, Norwich, Woodstock, Putnam, I mean, this area, we've Killingly, certainly, we've been in a lot of those schools and we're nicely received.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's terrific. I do think this is very important and timely to be having these conversations, and you offer such a wonderful, expansive look at the issue. And yeah, I'm glad you're out there and meeting with our children.
Well, it's a familiar story. It's one I know. I guess, we're always told to talk about what we know best. And having grown up with survivors and, coming out of a DP camp, I was fortunate. My parents talked about their experiences, especially my mother. We'd be sitting at dinner and all of a sudden the subject would come up. She'd say, I remember one night in the camp and, it was like these awful stories. But, she just looked back and she just wanted to share it. And so, in a way, I feel like I'm honoring them. I'm honoring the other people that created this community who had similar stories. And I think, we want to be known. We want to be remembered. And if we go through a difficult time, if we feel like, there's something that others might benefit from knowing about, then I feel impelled to sort of share it. And I think that's sort of what motivates the folks that are involved with the Preservation Society. That and for everyone, it's something a little different, but surely the lessons that can be taken from a simpler time, a more collaborative time, a more generous time. I think, especially in today's politics, there's a lot to be learned there. And maybe it's nostalgic and, you sort of say, yeah, that's the way it was then, but it can't be now. I think it can be now. And I think we all benefit from seeing examples of how it can work in a positive way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I see Renee put a question in the chat. Renee, did you want to ask your question or do you want me to go ahead and read it?
No, you go ahead.
Okay, there you are. She says, you mentioned relationship with the Jewish congregation in Putnam in your presentation. Was there generally interface or cooperation among early mid-20th century Jewish rural communities in Connecticut? Was that something a little unusual?
You mean the communities working together with each other? Not unusual at all. It was quite common. And part of it was, especially in the smaller towns, you didn't have the resources. I mean, it wasn't Hartford or New Haven that had, big synagogues with a staff, rabbis, cantors, administrators, teachers. We had none of that. We were all volunteers. So there was always something to share. And there was always an opportunity to have a program that would be a cultural program, a social program, where you would draw people together and you'd say, okay, we've got a speaker coming and we need to, collect money at the door. But if it's, 2 or 3 communities working together, that often, made those programs more successful. As far as the interfaith piece, I mean, we started very early on. I think 5 years into the synagogue's existence, it was one of the Herb Schneider, one of the local optometrists, who had this idea about celebrating Thanksgiving together with a church. And so 70 years ago, that partnership started with the Federated Church of Christ, and we take turns. One year they hold the service at the church, next year we hold the service at the temple. And there's some wonderful friendships that have grown out of putting that service together. And again, it's just it underscores the vitality of our approach, which is let's embrace the community. I mean, it's like it's not just about being Jewish or being Christian. It's about being human beings, about living in this community. How do we address hunger? How do we address drugs? How do we address education? This is something everyone's invested in, not just one religious group or another.
Right. Did anyone else have a comment or a question? Now, this has been a really terrific conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your stories with us. Again, very timely and, inspiring and grounding at the same time. So thank you. Thank you for the program, and we will have this in our library so we can share it with others, because I'm sure a lot of folks would be very interested in seeing this story.
Well, thank you so much for your hospitality and for the opportunity. It's a pleasure doing it, and thank you so much for the work that you guys do. I mean, it is there's so much to be. It's a beautiful state. There's so much in it that deserves preservation and being honored and disseminated, and you guys do some great work. So hats off to you.
Well, thank you very much. And thanks everyone for attending, and we hope to see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Norm.